and welcome to this beautiful evening discussion on what's coming up for us after the election. So, I have with me today Donna Wilson, who is a leader of the Green Party of Alberta.
Actually,
And
sorry, it's the Alberta Liberals, Alberta
oh,
Liberal
oh,
Party.
I'm so sorry.
That's no problem, Mary.
Oh, wow. Uh, yeah, that was a bad start. So, let's do this again. So we have Donna Wilson with us, who is the Liberal Party leader for Glenora, for the Glenora riding. And today I'm going to ask you to first give a small introduction about your background.
Well, thank you. I'm a nurse and loved being a nurse, and I'll get into a little bit maybe why I became a nurse later on. But I've managed hospitals. I've worked in hospitals around the world. It's a great experience, and also taught at the University of Alberta. So I had many nursing students from around the world. Wonderful experience. Looked after many people who had healthcare needs from every every different country in the world. But I also did as a University of Alberta research professor. You do a lot of research. And much of my research was on ageism. So another type of discrimination, visible people who tend to be different, visibly different, tend to be discriminated against. And so ageism was one of the main things that I did research on as I was a university professor. But I'm a mom, like many women. I divorced and raised a child, and she's a wonderful person. I have an organic garden. I grow my own vegetables and carrots, and I have for years.
Wow.
And I love exercise. I love the great outdoors, and love to learn things. And I'm really worried about our healthcare system. So I've got three planks that kind of made me decide, okay, I'm going to run for politics again. We need to improve our very expensive but very slow and inefficient healthcare system. And I have some ideas for that. We need to make education, more Albertans get into post-secondary education and make schools help children advance into post-secondary education, because Albertans have typically had the lowest post-secondary attendance rate in Canada. It's been a major issue for decades. But the third big plank, which has not been really talked about much in this campaign by any political party other than the Greens, is the environment. I'm extremely worried as a nurse and a researcher about the environment. So in a nutshell, I'm a nurse. That's number one. A mom. And I think a responsible person who is very concerned about social justice. And that's why I joined the Alberta Liberals, because that's a major plank. It's a value of Liberals, that we treat people equally and well and give everyone equal opportunity to flourish in society. So I'll stop there. That was kind of a long answer. I was going to make it shorter, but I sort of got going.
Because you're our only candidate here, so I don't have any problems with giving you as much time as you need to talk. So let's go to the next question, which is exactly about the environment. So what is the kind of plan that you have when it comes to environment?
Okay. Would you mind if I just expand a little bit more on the first question before I get into the plan for, and understand, actually, it was really nice to see ahead of time that you wanted to ask about my personal commitments and also the Alberta Liberal commitments to social justice in the BIPOC community. And so if you don't mind, I need to give a little bit more information, I think, about me and why why that really has influenced the plans and what the Alberta Liberals would like to do for Alberta and what I would like to do for citizens in Alberta and in Edmonton Whitemud. Um, I have to say, I think a lot of what we are in life is what we're raised with. And my dad was in the war for 5 years. He was 18 years old. The World War II started, and he was away from home for 5 years and came back actually 6 months after the war had ended. And those years taught him to respect other cultures and be interested in other cultures, but also to fight for what was right. You know, that Hitler and the tyranny and the, killing of the Jews and political dissidents and what have you, that was just, he willingly fought in that war and would have lost his life in that war. And he brought those values home. And at the same time, he married my mom, um, who happened to be a German-speaking woman in Canada. And she learned at a very young age that Canadians did not like German-speaking people. And she grew up with that. And so my early life experiences, even before I went to school, were very much guided by parents who had recognized how serious discrimination is and how important social justice is where all people can flourish. When I went to school, it was long enough ago that actually women um, were never encouraged to be lawyers or doctors or any of the important jobs, because men only could do those jobs. Women in those days were encouraged to be mommies, have children. Nurses could be nurses or teachers or maybe stewardesses as well, but you would quit when you would have children and be a mommy. So, and yet times were changing, and I went into nursing, and I'm thrilled that I did, because the code of nursing for all nurses is that we respect all people and we respect differences. And we embrace differences in people, because out of that diversity, you it supports really good change. And as a nurse, I got to work in New Zealand, where I worked with a lot of Maori people, and I found since I worked in New Zealand, many government acts have been passed to ensure that the Maori people there have absolutely equal rights, in that terms of language, economic ability, and social ability, and everything. And it's now really celebrated
Can I
in.
just stop you here?
Yes, go ahead.
I think we've gone a lot into the background. Can we
Yes.
now move into
Oh,
how this has impacted your policy and what is the kind of policies you're planning to make in terms of social justice?
okay. Thank you. Yes. What I tried to do, Mary, again, was point out, you know, that I have quite a grounding in terms of social justice. And in fact, I have friends who are Black and Chinese and East Indian and what have. They're my, good friends and whatever. So, but I do know that we're in Alberta, where there is some real discrimination. There is some real racism. Some of, and again, visible minorities, whether you're elderly, whether you're Black, whether you speak a different language, whether you wear a different kind of clothing, you can be subject to discrimination, racism, etc. So, in keeping with the Alberta Liberals, what we would like to see in terms of equal opportunity, we would like to see improvements in things like, for instance, the Whistleblowing Act.
Mhm.
That was something that I tried to get improved as just a citizen who noticed deficits in the Whistleblowing Act. So employers can decide that they really don't want to hire someone who looks different, and they can treat them, if they do hire them, they can treat them differently than they would other people in their organization. And the current whistleblowing act is essentially toothless. You're supposed to, if you have a concern, you're supposed to report to your employer, who of course might be the one who's actually discriminating against you, and things are supposed to be settled there. And so the Whistleblowing Act needs to be greatly improved. Other things that I personally and the Alberta Liberals would like to see is the elimination of age, race, and other factors from employment applications. So there really can be more of an equal playing field, and you may not even have to report as well to things like you got a degree, your nursing degree or your law degree or your engineering degree from a foreign university. The reality is you got a degree, and that's a degree which should be equivalent to other degrees, and are you registered in the province? So getting information like that can contribute to discrimination in hiring practices, in employment practices, but also in promotion practices. So there's many specific things that we would like to see in changed in law, but we also would like to do what other countries have done, such as New Zealand. That's why I mentioned New Zealand. How did they manage to make their Indigenous people rise in terms of pride, opportunity, income, and all of that was important as well for a reduction in
I think if we
our
have to complete
wages.
the interview, we have to be
Oh,
really
we're
specific on
finished.
exactly what you're planning to do once you come into power. Because if you go into all the, the story, I won't have time to ask you all the questions I want to. I'm
Oh,
sorry
sorry.
I stop you here.
Okay. Okay. Well, Mary, we don't thank you. I guess the reason why I'm saying this again is we don't have 87 candidates running in this election.
Yeah.
We cannot form government. And so what we would be doing, each individual MLA, if I was elected, I would be working between two parties that are very diverse and very angry at each other, and they tend to really focus on specific communities, specific population groups that have voted them in. And my job, based on the Alberta Liberal values and the policies that we have, is try to make sure that every person in Alberta, regardless of your background, whether you're an immigrant to Canada or to Alberta or not, whether you're old or young, whether you're black or white or Indigenous or whatever, that you have equal opportunity. So again, we are not intending to form government. We know we can't form government. We don't have a full slate, just like the Greens don't have a full slate. The Alberta Party doesn't have a full slate. But again, what we'd like to do is see some key, strong individuals, such as myself, with such a broad background and such a firmly entrenched belief in social values and inequality. And to really look at every policy then that is discussed in the legislature, every new law that might be coming from the federal government, so that individuals like myself would look at every one of those and stand up and say, this is what we should endorse, or this is how it should be changed, or how we should not accept this policy because it's not appropriate for social justice and equality for all people. So really, in many ways, we don't have a lot of specific policies. There are some things, again, that I pointed out, like the Whistleblowing Act, that really extremely deficient, and it's an Alberta Act that needs to be improved. So again,
And
we're not
give
going
a chance,
forward.
how would you improve it?
Okay, well, what would the a great deal of feedback has been provided about that whistleblowing act, and what it needs to be done is there needs to be a very open and easy opportunity for people to report what they believed is discrimination, and to be totally protected if they do report that. So there can't be any bullying after that or delayed punishment. So that has to be, set, very clear. Those two things really need to change about it. Anyone can very openly and easily report, not to their boss, but to a government official. Like we have a seniors ombudsman. We need to have something like that, who can investigate it. And again, a protection then that absolute protection both then and later on, that you are not harmed by raising an issue, even if you're not seen as being discriminated against. But that kind of, again, there needs to be the opportunity where people can advocate and to raise issues.
Sure. Thank you so much for that. And let's move on to the next question. And the next question is going to be about the environment. Is there any other topic that you would seriously like to talk about? Because we have only 10 minutes left.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Well, there were three things that I really were my priorities: healthcare, education, environment. But if we talk first about the environment, we have some major polluters in the province who continue to pollute, and they don't have to pay for that. It becomes a public expense. So we need to stop polluters, and we need to fine them so that we can get the money, not from general taxation or revenues, but from polluters to clean this up. We need to encourage Alberta-based production and manufacturing. Much of our goods are brought in from great distances from other countries. We need to expand our local reduce, reuse, recycle, and we need to take surpluses, any surpluses that we've got, which come from oil and gas, and use them to change our economy into a green economy. We need to make that shift, where not only do we stop contributing to a polluted environment, but we actually go back, like we reverse it. And that is possible to do. So that's environment. If you're okay, I'd like to talk about healthcare.
Yes,
One
please.
of, one of the worst things about our healthcare system is that we wait until people are ill and then we try to fix them. That is very expensive. It means there's a great deal of suffering, and we'd like to have a lot more healthcare that's health promotive. We'd really like to see a lot more home care to keep people well, and like especially elderly people and disabled people, keep them well and out of hospital. We'd like to see nurse practitioners who believe in health promotion, just like every nurse, but they have the same education and training as a family physician, to be working in hospitals and communities, because they would have much more of a focus on healthcare. They would also shorten ER wait times. They would help keep people out of hospital, et cetera, et cetera. That's some of the research I've done in other countries about the value of nurse practitioners. They have not been allowed to start really in Alberta. We have about 800, but they don't work as independent like family doctors are, whereas other countries and provinces have them working independently.
Wow. That
Yeah,
would truly take care of quite a bit of shortfall that we have.
totally. And as one nurse practitioner in Ireland who was looking after people with serious chronic illnesses and keeping them out of hospital. She said, when you get 3 or 4 of me for one physician. So it's a real, there's many, many economic benefits that
Benefits.
that
Mm-hmm.
come from it. We have an incredibly expensive healthcare system. And again, a lot of it is focused on illness care. We wait until people are ill and then they're in hospital. And we don't have a lot of community care to help people get out of hospital or to keep them from getting into hospital. The second one, if you don't mind, I'll talk very briefly then, is about education.
Mm-hmm.
We Alberta has been known for years and years and years for very few of our own children go into universities, colleges, and NAITs and SAITs, go into post-secondary education. Part of that was just because of our heritage of farming and what have you, but also because we had oil patch jobs where young men and young women didn't even have to finish high school to go out and get very big salaries. Um, but now that we know that the oil patch really comes and goes, our boom and bust economy, and we know because of the environment that we have to shift to green technologies and a greener life, we need more of our Alberta students to go into university. So we need to expand our post-secondary programs, and they've been cut back severely under the UCP government. So it's very difficult, for and very expensive now for Albertans to go to university or to college or NAIT or SAIT. And our K to 12 system is not set up where students are encouraged and expected to go on. It's so we'd like to see some changes in the K to 12 system where young women and young men are encouraged to go into, and to become our future doctors and lawyers and nurses and everything. So we don't have to rely on people coming to Alberta, for jobs. But there's one policy that I want to point out that we got passed, the Alberta Liberals passed, and it's mine, which is that university programs should be filled with Alberta students. Because in fairness, Alberta taxes built the universities and pay for universities. But we would like to see for every program an extra 10 to 15% of international students accepted into every program, because that the knowledge they bring and the cultural values and all the diversity that they bring to Alberta, and especially to young university students or college students, that's extremely important for a future society where everyone in Alberta accepts everyone, regardless of your race, your color, what you wear, whether you're a visible minority or not. So again, one of the specific policies that we would be trying to push for, if we get Alberta Liberals elected to the legislature, is to increase our post-secondary programs again, because more of our own students need to go into them to be doctors and lawyers and nurses and engineers and all those other things, but also to make sure that every single program will accept 10 to 15% more students who are
Sure.
going for
Thanks for that.
elsewhere.
Now, I want to ask you also about reducing taxation because, like we've had so much of inflation and like the mortgage interest rates going up, and it's been a very difficult time post-COVID for everybody here. So, like, what is your plan when it comes to, taxation? Like, how are you planning to make it easier?
Yeah. Well, something that's probably a very well-kept secret is how the middle class in Alberta are the most heavily taxed in Canada. We've had We haven't had a sales tax in Alberta, so we sort of think, that's always been celebrated that we don't have this, an extra 5 or 10% that we have to pay when we buy things. The various conservative governments over the years have said, a 10% flat tax, and so personal income tax is so very low in Alberta compared to other provinces. The reality is that that personal taxation is one of the biggest incomes for the Alberta government. Every year they're actually looking at the financial statements currently, and when you look at what the Alberta government gets in terms of they last year they hoped to bring in 13.5 billion in income tax from Albertans. They actually got 18 billion. And some of that again is because the middle class, about the 80% of people in the middle, are the highest taxed in Canada, and we don't realize that's a very, very big secret that's been kept under wraps for quite some time. So one of the things that I personally would like to see, and that the Alberta Liberals would like to see, is an examination, an open and transparent examination of how much we are paying in terms of income taxes. And by the way, in terms of premiums, fees, and licenses, Albertans pay an additional $4 billion a year on premiums, fees, and licenses like driver's license, marriage license, building, like et cetera, et cetera. We are actually quite heavily taxed in Alberta, and that's a major concern when you think then that you have to buy food. You've got to pay your rent. Car insurance rates are very high in Alberta, et cetera. So we have this false idea that, in fact, Albertans are kind of lucky that we pay less taxes. We don't. We need an open and transparent examination of income taxes, premium fees, and licenses, and other ways that individuals and families in Alberta are taxed.
Thank
And
you for that.
yeah.
Is there any other area that we haven't covered? We have 2 minutes to go over that.
Oh goodness, thank you. Yeah, no, I think in many ways you've been wonderful for asking me. I think that the primary questions. I think if I can say just in closing, I have been very distressed actually by the nasty advertisements. Of two possible governing parties not focusing on what they would do for Alberta and for Albertans, but in fact, what is wrong about the other one, the mudslinging. I worked in the United States, and it's worse than I even saw down there. I
I totally agree with you. For the first time, I saw the elections becoming so un-Canadian. According to me, who's an immigrant, I
Yeah,
find this so un-Canadian. Like I'm thinking,
yeah,
what is going on?
yeah, and and the sad part about that, and I've talked to many media about that, is there is such now hurt and hatred on both sides. How are those people going to work for the better of of Alberta and Albertans? Because clearly one will win or the other one win. It almost looks like neither of them will get much of a majority. So they're
Yeah,
going to
I
have to
would,
work.
I would, I
Yeah,
would agree.
yeah,
The thing is that we're going to see people from both of these parties and maybe some sprinkling from the others. But, uh, but they need to work together. So if they're going to be like this at the outset, what is going to happen to our province? I was just
yeah,
so like distressed by after seeing that interview. It just hurt me
yeah,
to think that two leaders who we need to look up to are not even like giving us that feeling of wanting to look up to them.
yeah.
It's
You know,
it's sad.
yeah. I mean, at the heart nursing, social justice is respect for other people, and listening to them and trying to understand them. And that's where I think we've really got a big problem. We've got these two very polarized now, very different parties. And I don't know how they will work together. So that's why, again, I hope a few MLAs, such as myself, quite an experienced and strong person, can get that in there and be in the middle to try and be that marriage broker, counselor, whatever you want to call it, because again, and I've sat in the legislature in the last year, and it was just I stopped taking students. It was just too nasty.
Yeah, thank you so much, Donna. I really appreciate your mature views, and I really believe that there is a space for somebody with that strong voice. And we
Thank
will
you.
see how the elections go. And I wish you all the best. Thank you so much for
Thank
sharing
you, Mary.
everything that you wanted to with our audience today. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.